Hello everybody, and welcome this week to Talking Flutes Extra, with me, the old flute geezer from London town, Jean-Paul Wright. A big shout out to our podcast sponsors, TJ Flutes, for their continued support. You can show them some flute love by following them on socials, Instagram, YouTube and TikTok at TJ Flutes, or on Facebook and YouTube at Trevor James Flutes. Katy Wherry is an accomplished flute player who performs and teaches around the world. As founder of the popular Etude of the Week, the online flute community with over 7,500 members, Katy has found her purpose in empowering people with a passion for music to discover and pursue their individual musical paths. Her wonderful new coaching program, For the Love of Flute, supports flute players in pursuit of their musical goals so that more people feel encouraged to share their passion with the world. A couple of weeks ago, I dialed into Katy via Zoom and began by asking her where this love for the flute began.
What a beautiful question to start with. I love this. So really the moment that I knew I wanted to be a flute player, because I started playing flute when I was about maybe 12 or 13. When people here in America start when we're in 5th grade and we have to choose an instrument. That's the age. And I never really had a teacher when I started. I taught myself, and I was kind of naturally, I could get a sound out faster than anyone else. So I thought I was very cool. And then I was second chair flute in my middle school band. And the first chair flute said, "Hey, this guy James Galway's coming into town. Do you want to go hear him play?" And I was like, "Who is that? I've never heard of him before." I didn't know anything. And my mom was always the mom that would take us anywhere, right? If I said, "Hey mom, can we go do this?" She's like, "Yeah, I'll drive." So I asked my mom if she'd take us to this concert. And James Galway was playing with the Colorado Symphony. So we went, and I had no idea that that's what the flute could sound like. It just totally blew my mind. I was a little kid with wide eyes in the audience, like, "Oh, what?" And at the end, he played his Danny Boy encore, and I remember feeling so emotional. Oh yeah, just tears, and I knew in that moment, this is what I want to do. It was just like a click in my brain that just said, I really want to take this seriously now. And at the end of his concerts, he does a little autograph signing. And so I went and got the program signed by him, and he said, "Well, what makes you want to play the flute?" And I looked at him and said, "Someone's got to take your place someday." Because
Yes.
I was such a little, oh my gosh, just like, what? I can't imagine saying that now, And so he loved that, of course, and laughed and said, "Let's keep in touch." And he gave me his email address, and every day I emailed him. Every single day, whether it was, "Hey, how's the weather in Switzerland?" Or, "I'm thinking about getting a flute. What should I buy?" One day he calls my house, and my mom says, "Hey, Katy, phone for you." And I'm like, "Hello." He's like, "Katy, it's Jimmy." I'm like, "What?" I didn't remember. So we kind of had this bond, since I was 15. And then in high school and trying to get into college for flute playing, but I was so far behind. I didn't know anything. I couldn't play a scale. I had a little $200 flute. And so then I got my first real flute teacher. And James Galway invited me to go to his class in Switzerland. This was in 2002, I think. Or 2004, I don't know, some amount of many years ago. And at the time, my dad's a golf professional. So he was trying to get back on the golf tour. And so we were living in a little 2-bedroom apartment, my parents and my siblings. So I shared a room with my 2 siblings, and we didn't have much money. But James Galway sent me an email and said, "I really want you to come to this masterclass in Switzerland." And I showed the email to my mom and was like, "Hey, look, I got invited to this thing." Thinking there's no way I can go. It's not cheap to go to that. But my mom just said, "There's no way you're not going to this." we'll make it work. And so we raised money. We went to all the businesses in my community and told them the story, and they donated things, and we had a silent auction and raised enough for me to go. So I went to the Galway class when I was 15. And at the Galway class, they have two separate classes. They have one for the amateurs and the kids, and then one for the professionals. And Jeannie Galway teaches the beginner class, and Sir James teaches the advanced class. But he let me play in the professional class because he said, Katy worked so hard to get here, you know. And that from that moment, it was like, okay, I can do anything. This is amazing. So that was my whole crazy beginnings of playing flute, was with James Galway. There are worse things, I think, you know.
So as the love started when you heard him play the flute?
Yes. Yeah.
Did it unlock that emotion straight away? You know, when he plays Danny Boy, there is something that is quintessentially Sir James.
Absolutely.
And however many people come along afterwards, it's a bit like Pavarotti. When you hear Pavarotti sing, you know it's him.
Yes.
When you hear Placido Domingo sing, you know it's him. Jimmy, you know it's Jimmy.
Right away.
Yeah. I mean, there is something. I mean, that was the reason I started, was that I came downstairs and my mum was crying in the kitchen. The radio was on, and it was Danny Boy.
Oh my gosh, so we're the same.
Yeah. And my mum's old English, so if you chop one finger off, it doesn't matter. I've got another 3. But she was crying, and I thought,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, and I just thought, I want some of this power. So that's the reason I started playing the flute. I've made her cry so many times, but not do flute playing.
Like, oh, let's try something different. Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. Yeah. But it is. It's such a special power to have, isn't it?
It's a special power to have. You want to play because you are emotionally hooked. That's the big thing. Yeah. Rather than parentally hooked or teacher hooked, you are not only emotionally hooked, but you had to work damn hard to get over to Switzerland, not knowing what you're going to find. And you're going to go into a class with Sir James Galway, the guru, the top dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Play. You've got a lot of You've got a lot of balls, haven't you?
That's true. Yeah, I've been told. I remember I played the Bizet l'Arlésienne on my Gemeinhardt. Yeah. And I couldn't get the top G out at all. I mean, I didn't know. This is before I got my actual teacher. Yeah. So I was trying, and I remember thinking, oh, maybe it's my flute. You know, Galway had this platinum flute, and he said, here, let's trade. He tried to play his platinum flute, and I don't think I could even get a sound out of it at all. I didn't know how to use my air, let alone.
Was that his Nagahara, or was it his Muramatsu?
Yes.
Nagahara.
And so then he took my Gemeinhardt and played the Bizet on mine, and I mean, still sounded unbelievably like him. And that was another important lesson. Speaking of who cares what flute you play, you know, he takes this student little $400 Gemeinhardt flute and sounded incredible, you know, playing that thing. So yeah, it was quite the experience. That in that moment, it was so important because I learned then that I didn't need to have any shame or embarrassment or fear of being judged, because I was there to learn. And I think at 15, being younger, it was a little easier because I didn't have all of the judgment trauma that we build over the years.
As flute players or as musicians, you tend to carry or push this trolley of baggage, don't you? And that baggage is built up over the years. What we're trying to do is we're judging ourselves against others. We're measuring ourselves against others. And we're worrying about what others thinking about us. And that shopping trolley just gets full and full and full.
To the point that it then hides your whole self.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it feels safe. But I think it's such a tragedy we're all such unique humans, and to have music to share with each other is the most important thing we can do. Who cares if you miss a high G? I don't. You know?
Dum dum da 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 dum 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 dum. Yeah. So you came back from that course. You must have come back a different person and a different musician.
Yeah, absolutely. It was incredible. And then that's when I really started the work. So I had a wonderful teacher. Her name's Michelle Stanley. She teaches at Colorado State University here in Colorado now. I mean, she kicked my butt. Did not let me off the hook at all. So I really had to kind of fast track my Taffnell and Gobert. Let's do all the things, learn the scales, do your tone exercises. And I really did. I took it very seriously then to the point that then I got into college to play the flute. So yay, it worked out. But it was a lot of work, definitely.
And then you went on, did your master's?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I did my master's with Christina Jennings.
Oh, what a sound that lady has. What a
she's
sound.
Another one. You know, I really think James Galway, I can hear within 1 second, I know who it is. Christina is one of the only others that I feel like the second she plays, I know it's her.
And I hear it. It is in the lower octaves.
Yeah.
There's something about that is just, whoa, where does that come from?
Exactly. Yeah, she's a special one. So I'm just so lucky to have had these mentors in my life. I studied with Brooke Ferguson also. She's principal of the Colorado. Another just, absolutely phenomenal player. So be surrounded by all of these amazing people is the most inspiring thing ever.
It's cool. And how have you managed to create Katy the flute player? In other words, to bloom, to blossom. And what I mean by create, it is we've all got something, we've got a seed inside of us. And many of us, when we flower, we go in different directions and not necessarily in the direction we want to do because, we're following all these societal norms. How have you managed to bloom and blossom?
I love it. Seems like you've done these interviews before, maybe. Questions are awesome. There's a couple of answers to that. I think that definitely having the inspiration of James Galway and Christina Jennings and really knowing from such a young age what it feels like to be emotionally touched by a musician, right? It doesn't even matter that they were flute players. I don't think it just happens that I wanted to play the flute, so that's how that worked out. But also, it's interesting how our paths shift all the time. And I went into college thinking, I'm gonna audition for orchestras. I feel like that is kind of the path that we should take, when we want to be professional flutists, because thinking about, making a living otherwise, it's hard to comprehend how you would do that unless you get a job in an orchestra or as a professor. But then in college, I had some really good friends who played in a steel drum band. This is so random. I was still doing all the tone practices, listening to Galway CDs every night before I went to sleep. It was all of this stuff. But then over here, my friends are doing this thing and they say, you have to join this. It's so fun. And I said, no, I don't have time. I have to practice my excerpts. I have to learn the Gobert concerto. I have to do all these things. I don't have time for this. And finally, I was just like, you know what? I deserve to have a little fun. Let's do this thing. So I joined the steel drum band, and it totally changed my whole idea of what I wanted my path to be. I'm like, I can play music and have fun. I can dance and play, what? So I played steel drums. There's an album that is my steel drum band, if you ever want to listen to steel drums. But then they asked me to play a flute solo on the steel drum album. And I remember saying, I don't know how to do that, because they wanted me to do an improvised flute solo. And I said, I can't do that. And, being the ballsy woman I am, I was like, yes, I'll do it. And so I started taking jazz improvisation lessons from the saxophone professor at the school I was at. And that just opened up so many other things, so much other opportunity for just joy and expressing myself and learning. So learning how to improvise was a huge thing for me. And then I totally went off the orchestral path. I was like, nope, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I started doing a lot more jazz, improvisation, started just playing, gigs with friends, but still with the idea that I want to have this full, beautiful Galway-esque tone sound, So it was kind of a combination of those things, I think. And then now I play in this Balinese gamelan ensemble. I've been playing in it for about 9 years. It's the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. It's crazy hard. That's also helped change my perspective about what it means to play music and connect with people. Because it's not just about playing, flute and piano stuff. There's so much other amazing music out there that colors each other, I think.
It does. And when I'm watching you do that Balinese music, the different type of emotion that comes from that style, that genre, to listening to some Fauré or listening to other classical music, it is still there. The depth of emotion is still there,
Exactly
but tonally it is different.
Yes, I completely agree. It's amazing because it's still that connection. And then experiencing those things, I think, really deepens the understanding of what it means to be a musician, right? Because then all of a sudden it's like, it's not about me anymore. It's not about, oh, I just want people to like my flute sound. It's deeper than that. And then the fear of judgment kind of goes away a little bit more because it's not so much about what people think of me anymore.
But that's what I've heard from other people about you, is that you don't play for you play for the enjoyment of others. And that's a big difference in how we perceive ourselves as instrumentalists. So where do you locate emotion, Katy? Where does it sort of come from? Does it bubble up from your chest? Does it come down from your head? Where does it locate?
Oh, it's right in the middle. I think. Yeah, it's definitely from the heart. Sometimes a little from the belly, and that's why I think the practice of breath and meditation or yoga or whatever these kinds of things are so important, because I think a lot of times when we're too up in here, because of course you have to be in your head somewhat, right? Especially when you're practicing. You still have to be able to analyze something and say, actually, I would rather do it this way. Let's rinse and repeat, whatever the thing is. But when it comes to performing, if you're so tense and nervous and scared and worried about being judged, the access to what's happening inside of your soul, inside of your body, in those places that I think everyone's a little different. Mine's like right in my solar plexus, I think, is where I feel the real core of my love, let's say, But I think it's important to be able to access that. Mm-hmm. And nerves are such a block.
They are.
They're a love block. Yeah.
But we're going to move on to something really important a bit later to do with love. Yes. But what I'd like to do is to cover something that has become a bit of a phenomenon in the flute playing world. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you didn't mean it to become what it's become.
Not at all. Right.
But Etude of the Week. Yeah. Right. Tell our Talking Flute listeners. I mean, obviously I know what it is. For those that don't know what it is, Katy, please tell them the monster that you've created.
Yes. Oh, it's absolutely a monster. And I am every day in awe of what it's become. It's absolutely amazing. So Etude of the Week is a group on Facebook where we, as a group, vote on a book of etudes that we progressively work through together. So we'll start with number 1. The next week we do number 2, and we do the entire book. And it started when I graduated from grad school, and I'd lost all of these opportunities to play with people, right? All of a sudden, wasn't playing an orchestra anymore. I didn't have chamber ensembles anymore. I didn't have a teacher anymore for the first time ever, So here I am, like, just out of grad school, like, what do I do? So I started Etude of the Week as sort of a way to hold myself and some of my fellow friends who had graduated, who were looking for a little bit of accountability, to hold us accountable to do something every week. So it started as that. I think we started with Anderson Etudes.
You did?
That was 6 years ago now, so I don't know. Maybe we'll circle back around to those sometime. I think we had about maybe 6 people in it for, months, a year. I don't know. It started in August of 2015, I think. So, and then, slowly it grew to be maybe 50 people, and then it was 100 people. And then 3 years in, it's all of a sudden it's 1,000, and then it's 2,000. And now I think there's 8,000 people in it, 700, something like that, almost 8, from over 150 countries. The thing that Etude of the Week has taught me is that there has been this huge hole in our flute community for the people that don't quite feel like they're good enough, or they don't quite have a place to fit in, or they feel like their voice isn't valid because they didn't go and study at this school or with this teacher, or didn't really practice flute hard their whole lives. Maybe they chose to be a mom or a doctor or whatever, like they did something else with their lives. And even the ones now who are in high school or college who are choosing a different path but still have this genuine love for playing the flute, but feel like, oh, nobody wants to hear me. I'm not good enough. And that is such a tragedy, I think, that people have felt that way. But now Etude of the Week has created this space for people to, first of all, be honest about where they are. You know, people post, it doesn't matter if you've practiced the Etude all week, doesn't matter if you just play one measure. It doesn't, like, you just present yourself as you are in that moment without any shame, without any fear of judgment, and you get, you know, feedback that's always positive, it's always constructive and encouraging. And I think it's just so important for people to have a safe place to express themselves and to, you know, feed their flute love in a way. So it's really become a beautiful community, and I'm so grateful.
And it's not just for those that are returning back to flute playing or those that are doing it.
Right.
I mean, I was speaking to Mihi Kim not so long ago, professor of flute in Paris.
I love Mihi.
And Mihi does it. I mean, you've got
She loves it.
She does.
Yeah, I love seeing Mihi. Yeah, there's professionals for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Kristen McCall from the Concert Cabals posted a bunch. Amy Porter's posted a bunch. Marina Piccinini's done things.
Yeah.
You know, so it's, and I've heard from people like, I don't want to post because I know so-and-so is in the group. You know, but that defeats the purpose too, because it's like nobody's judging anybody here. This is, you know,
in our world, and also the world of social media, the non-judgmental aspect of what you're doing is so unusual, but it's so valid.
Yeah, I mean, because there's so many, you know, deep things here that we could get into, but
Yeah.
I think that there's a big part of, a lot of times as performers, sometimes we have to pretend like we're something that we're not.
Yeah.
You know, or pretend that you're better than you are, or farther along in a thing than you are. And I just think that causes so much, talk about blocking yourself. And I just think that you're doing yourself, we do ourselves, and the community a disservice by pretending to be something that we're not. Show up, hey, this is where I am, and that's okay. Have a high goal, set the bar high, but be where you are.
There's sort of a lot of honesty and integrity issues sort of surrounding that. And yeah, we could sort of tunnel down quite deeply in that. But I find the whole Etude of the Week fascinating.
Yeah.
In that you can honk along. I just like the fact that people that you're there, you're doing it, and everything is valid. Each person's performance, as you say, whether it's one measure, whether it's half the piece or all the piece, it is valid. And we need that in music. We need people to understand and to realise that whatever they do is valid in the universe.
Absolutely. Well said. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's, you know, etudes are meant to help us improve, right? They're meant, they exist for us to find a problem and solve it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think when too much emotion gets in the way of feeling like maybe this is too hard for me, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, no one wants to hear me, then you're defeating the purpose of trying to get better and learn something, right? If we can get rid of all those insecurities, then it comes down to, oh, okay, what's the problem I'm trying to solve here and how do I solve it? It's a little more analytical, but that's how we get better.
We're segueing quite nicely into your new project, which I think is beautiful in its construct and so needed in this world. For the love of flute. And the most important, there's two important words in there, which is love and flute.
Yep.
And
exactly.
You started with the emotional connection with Sir James Galway.
Yes.
You also had parents that would go to their nth degree to fund something to send you to Switzerland. So there was this inherent love for the instrument.
Yes.
In this world today we live in, there's not many positions or jobs for people that are studying or playing the flute. And sadly, a lot of females disappear off the scene. They go and do other jobs, they go and have children, but they have this deep-seated love and they come back to it.
Yeah.
Firstly, what made you start with the love of the flute, and explain more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been sort of a seed planted in my head and my heart for many years, trying to think of, you know, how can I turn this thing that I've noticed in Etude of the Week that's so desperately needed, you know, this support and this encouragement, but even more so, it's a deep dive into where do our fears come from? what really is holding us back from pursuing this thing that obviously is so meaningful and deep to us, because it's true. We keep coming back, even if you try to say, I don't need to spend my time and money on this. There's something about the flute that just draws you to it. And I think in our lives, it's so important to pay attention to those things. But really, it was Etude of the Week and noticing all of these people in there needing this safe space to express themselves. And I wanted to create something that was along the lines of that, creating that safe space, but kind of, getting past the surface level. Yay, you, good job, you sound great. And getting deeper into, why do you love this? The question that you asked first, what is it that you really love about the flute? How does it help you express who you are? And what are some of the, we get really deep into some traumas and emotional things and fears, fear of judgment, fear of failure, these things that are so ingrained in us as people for whatever reasons. They come from all different places, but they really exist, especially when you are a musician. It's such a vulnerable position to be in, to express yourself to other people. You're like, here I am, like it or not, But I think the more that, we can get into that with people, the better. So for the love of flute, it's sort of formed, and it's a work in progress. This is the first round. It actually officially starts this week. The first round, it's a 4-month program. And at the beginning of the program, we really get into, what path do you want to be on? You see yourself here now. Who do you want to be in 4 months from now? And how do we establish habits, not only in practicing the flute, but in your mindset about who you are and how you believe in yourself, that will help you not only 4 months from now, but for the rest of your life, to be able to show up for yourself and for others and, let go of some of these little monsters we have in our heads, so that way we're free to express yourself in your heart and show up in your community how you'd like to, instead of how you feel like you have to.
You mentioned earlier the importance of a safe space. I think that is really, really key to developing as an artist.
I agree. Absolutely.
I was listening to something. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and it was Stephen Bartlett, the Diary of a CEO, and he was talking to this wonderful guy about prosody, about public speaking, and he was talking about some of the biggest TED Talk artists or TED Talk speakers are actually introverts, and yet go onto the stage and they perform or they speak. They can gather an audience, and then they have to take that step back. Now, the safe space is important because it's almost a therapy in itself, because as musicians, we don't get a chance to talk, do we?
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. It's more of a coaching.
Yeah.
And I'm there if people have questions about, how do you practice this scale, or tell me about this trill. That's fine. We can talk about those things. But it's a lot more... It's more of a coaching program than it is, let's have a flute lesson.
Well, hence the word love, because the love means it means different things to every person.
Exactly.
And love means it's unlocking an emotion, unlocking a validity, unlocking the love for yourself as valid.
Yes, that's it, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And then... That's where when James Galway plays Danny Boy, that comes from a place of love. That's why it's so special. So if you can access the love that you have for yourself, absolutely, then you have the ability to actually spread that to others. And that makes the world better. It's not only good, I think it's important. It's like critically important for this to happen for people. Many women. So right now I have some women in the group. And it's not only women, men are welcome too. Anyone is welcome, no matter what age, race, gender, all the things. But the transformation that's happening already is almost every session I'm like, we're all, in tears. But the growth that's happening is so unbelievable. Unlocking these things within each other and ourselves. The other thing about it that I think is really important is this idea of doing things in a group. I think that it's interesting as musicians how we have always had private lessons. It's one-on-one all the time. And that kind of isolates us in a way. I understand the importance of it, that I'm not saying private lessons are invalid, but I think that to be in a group of other people who share similar experiences, even if you're on completely opposite sides, I have, one person who's a professional flutist in the group and one who is an adult who's coming back to it for the first time since she was like 10. Totally different playing levels, but very similar experiences with their fears and insecurities and the way that they show up for themselves. So it's amazing to know that you're not alone. Mm-hmm. And it's so empowering to be able to show up and, make those changes with other people who are doing it too.
It melts the insecurity. It melts the fear. Everyone's fear and everybody's experiences are very, very different. But if you know that somebody else is experiencing something, all of a sudden it sort of drains that down, doesn't it?
Yeah, it gives you permission to show up as yourself. And that's, it's amazing to see some of these people working through the fears and posting things anyway. I just did a live Etude of the Week session, which was kind of more like a For the Love of Flute session it turned into, because we really got into these conversations. This one girl this was live at the Boston Flute Festival last week, a couple weeks ago. And it's amazing to do it in person. It's a whole nother energy. But this little girl gets up, I think she's maybe 16 or something, and says, these conversations have really inspired me because the only time I've ever played flute is to try to be better than someone else. She's had to compete for a chair in her high school or for, her all-state band or whatever. It's always been competition that's motivated her. And she got up on stage and she said, I'm ready to claim my space and I want to play the flute because I love it. And everyone's like, yeah! And she played and it was so sweet. You could tell she was nervous and we worked on her air a little bit. And then there were these 3 other girls sitting in the audience who said they weren't going to play. But then as soon as this girl played, they felt confident to do it too. And then I looked at that girl. I said, you see what you did? You gave these other girls permission to show up as themselves because you showed up as yourself. And it was just, it's this, it's a ripple effect, I think.
But you're cutting out measurability, because we all have a measure, don't we, as defined by what other people think of us.
Exactly.
What you're trying to say is, ignore everybody. Be you.
Be you, where you are. And I think it's important to know that you can still set a high bar for yourself. You can still say, I want to be the next James Galway, like I did when I was 15 and I couldn't play a high G at all, But if you believe that it's possible for yourself, and that's a self-love thing there too, right? Knowing that you can, because anyone can, someone has to, And I think that's, as long as you put in the time and you have the awareness and you do the things. But a lot of us hold ourselves back and don't actually show up to practice because deep down you don't believe that you can. So it's pretty amazing. I'm so grateful to be a part of this, to have created it as a thing, but now I get to sit and witness the growth of, and it happens to me too. I'm a part of the journey also, and letting go of a lot of these things that hold us back from the love.
But you know what it's like when you're in a good space. I'm talking about, I have this thing in my diary, and I've been doing it for years, is that I track how I'm feeling during the day. So I have, on one day, I just want to see if there's a sort of a cyclical nature. So if I'm feeling meh, I always put a negative. If the equilibrium is fine, I got equals. Yeah. And if I'm feeling okay, I put a plus.
I like that. And I'm going to do that. I like that a lot.
And it means I can track, because we all have cyclical highs and lows.
Of course.
And we all have times in the month where there's hormones that are really affecting how you are and how you're behaving. And when you look at the patterns, I've found that I have this period that in each month where, I'm probably not feeling musically as sort of good about myself.
Right.
But the advantage of what you're saying and what you're opening up, because you're not directing them. What I'm getting is that you're getting them to flower themselves. You're just helping them to unlock the flower bud that is there.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And there are times when maybe you don't feel musically great. You don't feel motivated. getting the flute out of the case at all is, I've gone through that for sure. I think we all have. Motivation is such an interesting word,
It
right?
is, isn't it?
Because
Yeah.
yeah. We're not always motivated all the time. We can't, it's just not how we exist, I don't believe. I've never met anybody who's constantly motivated. But it's finding that deeper purpose. Why are you doing this? Why do you keep showing back up to the flute? Who is it for? Or what is it for? What genuinely motivates you in your life just over a big, broader spectrum? And then if you can keep coming back to that, even if you say, you know what, this week I can't touch my flute. I don't have the energy. That's okay. No one's going to die if you don't practice flute for a week. It's fine. But, what's your bigger goal here, and what's your purpose? Then it makes it a lot easier to get back to it instead of just saying, forget it. I'm going to go and do my dishes instead.
Go to the dishes. Oh, crikey. I have a dishwasher for that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to do that. Yeah.
But you keep the candle. I think the most important thing is once you've lit that candle,
yes.
And from what I'm gathering, that is what For the Love of Flute does. It sort of, it lights this warmth within.
Yes.
And
exactly.
that candle is constantly going whilst that love is being sort of let free.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And finding that light. And there are some dark moments.
There has to be. If you're opening up as a person, there has to be dark moments, yeah.
Growth comes in those spaces. There are many quotes about that, I think. But, growth happens in the hard parts when it's painful and difficult. And I think, Etude of the Week is wonderful because it gives people that safe space.
Yep.
It's all the positive stuff, though. There is no darkness there. It's all like, yay, everyone, which there's nothing wrong with. But For the Love of Flute is the actual, okay, here's the real stuff, The
real stuff isn't when you've got the tube in your hands. The real stuff is what's going on inside the head.
Yeah.
Which is stopping you and preventing you from enjoying and putting that love out there.
Yes, and connecting to others.
Yeah.
Critical. How do we show up as musicians and really affect others? How do we start that ripple effect if we can't be really embodying ourselves in the first place? It's like...
Yeah, I mean, my granddad, who I adored, and he told me many, many years ago when I was playing the flute, he said, don't forget that when you're playing, that music, that sound goes off into space, and that sound travels, and you never know, one day in millions of years' time, someone will just hear that sound that you just made.
That gives me goosebumps, actually, because that's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, our jobs are crazy. We're literally manipulating air.
Yes.
Like, how wild is that? That is something from outer space, really.
But the validity in everybody's performance.
Yes.
We just have to believe that we are valid in whatever standard. I mean, what is the standard? What is the measure? Mm-hmm. It's not.
I mean, it's their own.
Well, it's not Sir James, Sir James, and Dennis Burikoff and all these other players.
Right.
They are there. They're doing what they love and what they enjoy. But it's no less important for someone that's coming back, that's had 3 children, that is coming back to playing the flute and has a tone that sounds like a foghorn. It's all valid.
Exactly. And it's important.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. It's so good. This is the real work, that I do genuinely think it makes the world better. The more people that can really just genuinely love who they are and show up that way. And of course there's ups and downs, There are times when I'm just like, oh, I can't. I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm going to just lock myself in my room for a day and I'm not touching my flute. I broke my arm really badly about 4 or 5 years ago. It's 2018. And there was a moment when they said, you might not play flute again. Like, it was a crazy experience. And I had to take a lot of time off. I mean, and this was right before I was about to go do my very first guest artist recital and masterclasses in China in 2019. So I was like, But it was such a beautiful moment for me to stop and reset and really think about, why is this important to me? But it took this dramatic thing for me to just slow down for a second and think about it, And I think that we're all in a really unique position now coming out of this pandemic. because I think a lot of us had to stop and think about stuff a little bit differently. How are we going to show up now differently? We had to take some time to get kind of into ourselves, which is the perfect moment to do this kind of self-growth work.
I'm going to be interested to know how you develop as a person in the next 6 to 12 months, because the Katy Wherry that is here now will not be the Katy Wherry that's here in 12 months' time.
Yeah.
You will change, you will grow, you will also flower. And that's other people helping you do that yourself.
Isn't it beautiful? It's such a circle. We all do it for each other. What a powerful thing we can do for each other, you know?
The circle of love. I mean, it is just...
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm going to steal that too. Yeah.
So how do our listeners find the For the Love of Flute?
Yep. So we have a website. It's me, just me. fortheloveofflute.com is the website. This round is already closed off, but we will start another 4-month round in April or May. I haven't decided when I want to start yet. Probably April. And, you know, I will still be doing a lot of talking about this on social media, because I do think it's important to keep the conversation going. I do a couple of, you know, one-on-one coaching sessions if anybody wants to just kind of get into it a little bit before, you know, you commit to a whole 4-month thing. But I do think it takes the 4 months to get it going. So, but yeah, fortheloveofflute.com is the website. I also, if you follow me on social media, it's Katy Wherry Flute is my Instagram and Facebook. I'll post all of the things there. There's an email list you can join on the For the Love of Flute website also.
I've just started this new thing where my previous guest asks a question.
Oh.
And I pose this question to one of the guests coming up, because I never know what order I'm putting these out in.
Yeah.
I'm still going to take this question that was posed last week.
Okay. I love it.
And for you to answer. So the question is, what advice can you give to an aspiring musician who is wanting to be heard?
Oh, this is a great question. There's a couple of ways I can go with this, right? It depends on if they're wanting to be heard, right? It's how and where do you want to show up? So my first answer is find what lights you up first, right? Don't try to play I'm playing a Paganini Caprice this week. Don't do it. No, I'm just kidding. It's great. But, what do you want people to hear? I think that's the first question. If you're an aspiring musician, you just got to go out there and take the risks and do the things, I think. I have played so many gigs that are ridiculous. I played one at like a plumbing museum once with a toilet above my head. I played one at countless bars, like all of these places. But I think if you're an aspiring musician, we all are, aren't we? Just do it as much as you can. Like, take the risk and put yourself out there. I think that social media is a great tool for it. Recording yourself is a whole nother amount of scary. Recording yourself as well as doing live performances, I think, are equally important. I play concerts at my grandma's retirement home all the time. Talk about a grateful audience, They love it always. So I think, first of all, think about what it is you want people to hear, and form your programs around that. But also, I think sometimes if you don't know, it's important to take risks. I mean, that's kind of how I started with the steel drum stuff and doing improvisation. Now me and my little brother's a synthesizer guy. So we do, open improvisation concerts all the time. Well, I never would have, in a million years, would have pictured myself doing something like that. So stay open, take the opportunities that come, and take some risks and do weird stuff. That's my advice.
And that is the perfect way to end this podcast.
Yeah.
It is
do
just,
weird stuff.
yeah. Let yourself free. Let yourself go.
Yeah.
Cut the umbilical and just experiment.
Exactly.
Don't be pigeonholed.
Exactly. Yeah. And pay attention to what lights you up.
Yeah.
That's something I've really been thinking a lot about, is listening to when my heart tells me, oh yeah, this feels good and important for me. Pay attention.
Katy,
Good.
you've been so wonderful today. Thank you so much for taking your time. It's been wonderful.
Oh, I feel like we're best friends now, and I can't wait to have a glass of wine with you somewhere someday.
Well, what people don't know is we've already discussed where we're going to do the next podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
And a
I love it.
nice bottle of Chablis at the same time, a couple of leveler mics, and then we just get a bit, and my London accent starts coming out.
Good. I love it. If we get Stephen there too, then it's really trouble.
Oh, crikey, yeah. Stephen Clark, yeah. If you get him along, good grief.
I'm going to see him on Thursday, so.
Oh, give him all our love from over here. He's doing wonders over there.
Much. Really, it's been such a pleasure.
And what I'm so pleased that for the love of flute is actually exists, but B is that it really is going to be interesting to see the development, not only of your students, but also more of you, because the more that you develop, the more openings that there will be for others. And this community needs support. And
thank you.
It is not, we don't live in a linear society. I can't listen to someone that's just playing dots. I have to be moved emotionally.
Oh, I agree. Thank you. It's going to happen. We'll see. We'll see what happens, huh?
We will indeed. So thank you to Katy and also to you all for listening this week. Until next time, wishing you a musically fulfilling week ahead, and may your third octave pianissimo F sharp be particularly resonant and easy, because mine never is. Cheerio, everybody. Talking Flutes and Talking Flutes Extra are podcast productions by the Trevor James Flute Company. For more information, visit trevorjamesflutes.com.